On this episode of The Build-Up, we take another shot at the Ford Bronco. This one's a blank canvas. We want to maximize the personalization while we minimize the expenditure of money and time. It's something that's in Rough Country's wheelhouse every day. So we're going to hit up roughcountry.com and easily select upfits that will come right out of the box and bolt right on to make an immediate impact. This base model 2023 Bronco gives a heavy nod to the retro styling that drives the new Bronco's design. It's really true to the original style, and as such has quickly become one of our favorite formats for building up. We can't stop modifying the Bronco, and we don't want to. We've got a base model hardtop here that we're about to transform. Starting out, we've got our 2-inch M1 lifted struts, front and rear. This is going to be a monotube design for a smooth ride on and off road. The extra 2 inches is going to allow us enough room to run a 35-inch tall tire. This is going to be a Venom Power Terra Hunter RT. The RT is a rugged terrain tire. It's a hybrid between an all-terrain and a mud terrain tire, giving you the best of both worlds. And that 35 is going to give us an additional 2 inches of lift as well. We're going to wrap those around a Rough Country 87 series. This one is in matte black with a milled simulated rock ring. Not going to put a step per se on the Bronco, but we have got to cover up that ugly pinch weld. And to do it with style, we're going to use Rough Country's rock sliders. We're not going to replace the factory bumpers, but we are going to add the nudge bar to the front to give the front a little bit of pizzazz. It's also going to give us a spot to mount lighting. We're going to go with our 3.5-inch round LED lights. They're a black series with an amber DRL. We're also going to add our black series 40-inch light bar to the top of the windshield. To strengthen up our steering, we've got our Bronco HD tie rod sleeves. We've also got our lug nuts and our ditch light brackets, and maybe a couple of surprises along the way depending on how much time we have. But for now, let's get to getting. We're going to get the Bronco up on the lift, get the wheels and tires off so we can take the TPMS monitors, put them into the new wheels and tires, and while we're doing that, we'll go ahead and install our front and rear lifted struts. All right, with our wheel and tire off, we can see what we're working with. We're going to need to remove our factory strut assembly, and in order to do that, we're going to need to uninstall our tie rod, which we need to do to install our sleeve anyway. We also need to uninstall our upper ball joint, our ABS bracket, our sway bar link from our lower control arm, and then finally our axle from the hub. Once we do that, we'll be able to rotate the knuckle down, unbolt the upper and lower mounts of the strut, remove it, and replace it with the M1 lifted strut. Now the great thing about lifting with this M1 strut is it is out of the box and onto the Bronco. No spacer to add, no other suspension components to drop, nice and simple. Before we put the front end back together and while we've got the tie rod separated from the knuckle, we're going to go ahead and install our HD tie rod sleeve. It's going to take place of this jam nut, and it's going to help spread the load so we don't bend our tie rod off-road. Just to make sure we get to the alignment shop, I'm going to go ahead and take a measurement from the end of the boot to the center of the tie rod end. And that is, on this truck, it's 11.25 inches. That way, once I pull this off and replace the sleeve, I can get that back at 11.25 and we'll be exactly where we were before we started. We've got the M1 strut installed. We went ahead and snugged down the upper and lower mounts. We reinstalled our tie rod with our HD sleeve, snugged that down. We snugged down our upper ball joint, reattached our ABS bracket, and also tightened down and reinstalled our axle. The passenger side front assembles the exact same way as the driver's side, so I won't bore you with that. We'll move on to the back and install the strut there. All right, we've got the rear axle supported. We're gonna go ahead and unbolt the lower strut mount. We're gonna take out the splash guard in the rear, unbolt the upper strut mount. We're going to be mindful of the brake lines and the ABS harness, drop the axle down enough, take the struts out, replace them with the M1s, and get it all back together. All right, with the rear installed, we're ready to move on to the rock sliders. Now I've got it here on the bench. We'll go ahead and assemble the brackets, then we'll take it over to the Bronco, put it in place, and bolt it up. We're gonna give it an aggressive side profile, and they do function as a step if you lift your leg up high enough, but they'll also protect you on the trail. All right, the rock sliders are installed and the Bronco already looks 100 times better. We've got that nasty pinch weld covered up and the black from the bumper, fender wells, across the rock slider and into the back really ties together and looks great. Now we're ready to move on to the front. We're going to remove the factory gravel guard and loosen up the tow hooks in anticipation for installing Rough Country's nudge bar. While we've got the nudge bar on the bench, we're going to go ahead and install the 3.5-inch round LEDs as well. But first things first, we're going to loosen up our factory tow hook bolts, get the tow hook to drop down off the frame. That way we can slide our bracket into place, and we're not going to tighten it down yet. We're going to get it snug, then we'll mount the bar, make sure everything's positioned correctly, and give it a final tighten. Now what I love about these on the Bronco is they're round, they've got an amber DRL, they mimic the Bronco's round headlights with its amber parking light, and they match perfectly. All right, our front end transformation with the nudge bar and lighting is complete, and while we're on the subject of lighting, we're gonna stick with it. We're gonna install our ditch lights and our light bar. For our ditch light, we're gonna use the same 3.5-inch Black Series DRL that we put on the nudge bar. They're gonna mount right here in this factory bolt that appears to already be accessory ready. We're gonna remove the bolt. We've got a bracket that drops in so we don't mar the finish of the mirror. We're going to reuse the factory bolt and connect our LED bracket to that. To run the wire, we're going to need to get under the cowl, so I'm going to remove this bolt, route our wiring underneath it, and reinstall our bolt. All right, with the ditch lights installed, we're ready to install our Black Series 40-inch single row light bar above the windshield. We're going to be using Rough Country's Bronco specific brackets that are designed to drop right into the factory accessory mounts. I'm going to pop these factory caps off and get ready to mount our brackets. All right, I've got one bracket mounted onto the Bronco, and I've got one bracket mounted onto the light. Now this is a deviation from the instructions, but I'm doing this by myself, and I need the bracket to hit those studs and hold itself up so I can thread in this side. So if you've got two people, go ahead and mount both your brackets. That's the way we recommend doing it. I'm just doing it a little different. All right, we've got the 40-inch light bar installed on the Bronco, and it looks great. Not only is it functional, it's gonna light the trail up for us, it also sets off the overall look we're going for on the Bronco. It really tops it off, pun intended. Now for the surprise. We're gonna add Rough Country's spare tire delete for the Bronco for a couple of reasons. First, it's gonna improve our departure angle on the trail. Next, it means we don't have to buy a fifth wheel and tire, and being a budget build, that matters. And finally, it's gonna make the rear of the Bronco look that much better. First thing we're gonna do is install the third brake light in its housing, so we'll get it ready. We'll take the factory third brake light, it's gonna sit in just like that. Now we'll set our light and bracket into the housing and attach it with the supplied hardware. Let me get this all gathered up. I'll meet you around back and we'll get this installed. Now the factory harness is going to give us everything we need for the third brake light and the camera. It does not have the power for the tag lights, but that's okay. We give you the wiring. You're going to run it through the factory boot, follow along the harness, drop it down, and tie into your factory tag light. First thing to mount up is going to be our upper mounting brackets. Drop those into place on either side. Now we'll mount the main bracket. And that concludes the installation of the spare tire delete for the Bronco. It's got accommodations for your factory third brake light, your backup camera, and it has its own tag lights. Now this may look a little off with the 2 rough country tags, but when you install it, you'll put your state issued license plate up here and it's gonna look great. Meanwhile, our tires and wheels have arrived. Let's go check those out. Man, check out these Series 87s with the Venom Power Terra Hunter RTs mounted to them. It was definitely the right call. Enough talking, let's get them mounted up. Wheels and tires can make a build, and these make this one complete. Let's get it on the ground and check it out. The transformation of our Ford Bronco is complete, and what a transformation it is. Let's run down the parts list to see what we used to get it looking so good. To get the height we wanted, we went with the Rough Country M1 2-inch leveling strut. This is a mono tube strut for an excellent ride. It separates the oil and the nitrogen to make sure there's no cavitation, no fading under load, and it's the perfect strut for what we wanted to do. Next, for some flare, between the flares, we went with Rough Country's Rock Slider. This is going to protect the rockers and cover up that nasty pinch weld. It also takes the black from the bumpers around the flare, just pulling everything together. To add a little drama and personalization to the front end, we went with the nudge bar. This also gave us an opportunity to mount our 3-inch Black Series LEDs with amber DRL. We went with 4 across the bar. They really complement the round headlights and parking light, and we also use those for our ditch mounts. We finalized our lighting with our 40-inch Slimline Black Series mounted on Bronco-specific rough country brackets. And all this lighting is going to guarantee we know what's ahead on the trail. We went with the spare tire delete by Rough Country for the rear. It's got accommodations for your factory third brake light, reverse camera, and license plate. And last but not least, our rolling stock. We went with a Rough Country Series 87 in matte black with a milled rock ring. Wrap that in a Venom Power Terra Hunter RT. The best thing about this transformation is that anyone can do it. I literally went on our website, ordered these parts, and installed them. And you can too, from box to Bronco. In a weekend, you're gonna have a Bronco that looks better than anything sitting on Ford's lot. And the best thing about the website is we have so many products, you could visit that site 10 times a day and build 100 different Broncos. So why don't you? Roughcountry.com for all your Bronco needs. Check us out today.